He hadn't expected her to answer the door herself. The porch light flickered, a soft pulse that barely reached the edges of the rain-dark street. When the door opened, he forgot what he'd planned to say. She stood there, one hand resting against the frame, the other clutching a book pressed loosely to her chest. No words, just the sound of the rain between them. "Hey," he managed, voice lower than he meant. Her lips curved, not quite a smile, more like recognition. "You're here for Noah?" He nodded. "He said he'd be ready." "He's never ready," she said quietly, stepping aside to let him in. The hallway smelled faintly of cedar and something floral. The air was warm, too still, like the moment before a song starts. She wore a dark sweater, sleeves pushed just below her elbows. Her hair wasn't perfect. A few strands clung to her cheek from the rain. That imperfection made him stare too long. She noticed. He knew she did, because her gaze held him for half a second too long before drifting toward the staircase. "Make yourself comfortable," she said. "He's upstairs." He nodded again, but didn't move. His shoes left faint prints on the wooden floor, and he was suddenly aware of every sound. The soft tick of the clock, the low hum of a heater, the quiet rhythm of her breathing. She walked to the kitchen, her movements unhurried, deliberate. He followed without meaning to. "Coffee?" she asked, glancing over her shoulder. "Sure," he said, though he didn't even like coffee. She poured 2 mugs. Her hands were steady, her voice calm, but there was something in the way she avoided looking directly at him. It wasn't indifference. "I was careful." He leaned against the counter, pretending not to watch. The dim light caught on her necklace, a small silver pendant that shifted every time she moved. "Are you still in college?" she asked. "Yeah, last year." Her eyes lifted briefly. "That explains the quiet confidence." He laughed softly. "That's one way to put it." She smiled. Real this time, small but visible. It changed the air again, like warmth spreading through a room that had been too cold. For a while, neither spoke. She stirred her coffee, gaze fixed on the swirling surface. He watched the light move across her face, the small shadow beneath her lower lip, the faint trace of fatigue that made her look more human, more reachable. Then, softly, "You've grown." He blinked. "Sorry." She tilted her head, eyes still on her cup. "I remember you used to come here in high school. Always waiting in the car, too shy to come in." He smiled, embarrassed. "I guess I thought I'd say something stupid." "You just did," she said, but her tone was gentle, not mocking. The rain hit harder against the window. A single drop rolled down the glass, catching the light. He could feel something shifting, a thin thread between them tightening, fragile but impossible to ignore. He wanted to say something, anything, to break it, but his throat refused. She turned then, finally meeting his eyes. "You shouldn't look at people that way," she said. He didn't know what she meant until he saw the reflection of himself in her gaze. Too intent, too close. "Sorry," he murmured. Her breath caught, just enough for him to hear. Then she looked away. From upstairs, a door slammed, the sound of footsteps. The spell broke, but the air didn't clear. Noah's voice echoed faintly. "Mom? Who's down there?" She exhaled, quiet and steady. "Your friend." Then she turned back to him, the corner of her mouth curving again, that almost smile. "Stay a minute," she said softly. "He'll be right down." But before he could answer, her phone buzzed on the counter, a text lighting the screen. Her eyes flickered down, then up again, unreadable. And for the first time, he realized he didn't just want to understand her. He already did. He didn't sit down right away. The room still felt full, of things unsaid, of glances that had lingered too long. She moved around the kitchen as if trying to busy her hands, to make the air lighter, but every small sound, the clink of a spoon, the quiet inhale before speaking, seemed to pull him closer. "You still take it black?" she asked, nodding toward his untouched cup. He smiled. "You remembered that?" "I remember more than I should," she said, almost to herself. He didn't answer. She looked up then, eyes soft but uncertain, like she wanted to pull the words back. He took a sip. It was bitter, too strong, but it grounded him. The rain outside softened into a steady rhythm, and for a moment, the world felt smaller. "Do you ever miss it?" he asked quietly. She frowned slightly. "Miss what?" "Before. When we were all just kids hanging around here. You, Mr. Hale?" Everyone seemed solid then. She laughed once, but it didn't sound amused. "Solid. That's generous. Your friend's father was never really here. even when he was sitting right there at that table. He looked toward the table. Polished wood, a faint scratch across the surface, maybe from years of family dinners that had slowly turned silent. He left 2 years ago, she added, her tone matter of fact. Moved to Boston. Found someone else who made him feel young again. He watched the way she said it. Not angry, just tired. I'm sorry. She shook her head. Don't be. I think I stopped being angry when I realized I'd spent years trying to be someone he still couldn't see. He wanted to tell her he saw her. Not just the careful way she stood or the calm she wore like armor, but the truth underneath. The small pause before she spoke. The way her hands trembled just slightly when she thought no one was looking. Instead, he said, "That's not fair." She gave him a small smile. Fairness isn't really part of the deal, is it? The sound of Noah's footsteps upstairs echoed again, then faded. She looked up, waiting, then back at him. You should probably go before he comes down. I can wait, he said quietly. Something flickered in her eyes, a mix of surprise and something else. You always were stubborn. Only when it matters. That earned him a small, genuine laugh. It broke something in the room. The tension, maybe, or the space between their years. He moved toward the counter to set his cup down, his fingers brushing hers, barely. Not enough to call it a touch, but enough to make her stop breathing for half a second. She didn't pull away. Not immediately. Her eyes met his, not wide, not shocked, just searching. The rain had stopped. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It hummed, alive with something neither of them could name. You should go, she whispered finally. I know, but neither moved. The front door creaked slightly from the wind, a reminder of the world outside. Friends, rules, reasons this shouldn't mean anything. And still, their hands stayed close. Not touching now, but near enough that both could feel the warmth that shouldn't have existed. When Noah's voice called from upstairs, "Hey, you still here?" He stepped back, the spell breaking again. She looked down, then smiled faintly. Tell him I'll be upstairs soon. He nodded, lingering just a moment too long in the doorway. And when he finally turned to leave, her voice followed, soft, almost lost in the sound of the wind. You shouldn't look back, she said. He did anyway, and she was still there, still watching. The next time he came by, it wasn't planned. Noah had forgotten his charger at his apartment, and she'd texted him to drop it off. He told himself that was all it was, a simple errand. But when he reached her door again, that same quiet pull tightened in his chest. She opened it slowly, surprise flickering across her face before it softened into something else. You again, she said, voice low, unreadable. He held up the charger. Delivery service. Her lips curved. You could have just left it in the mailbox. I know. They both stood there, half in shadow, half in the fading afternoon light. Then she stepped acid. He's out. Won't be back for a while. He hesitated only a second before stepping inside. The house smelled the same. Coffee and cedar and something faintly sweet that didn't belong to the past. I'll just leave this, he said, setting the charger on the table. But he didn't move toward the door. Neither did she. Her hair was tied back this time, a few strands falling loose around her face. The light caught the edge of her cheekbone. He caught himself staring again. You always look like you're trying to solve something, she said softly. Maybe I am. What's the question? He met her eyes. Why does it feel like I shouldn't be here, but I don't want to leave? Her breath hitched, quiet, almost invisible, but it was there. That's not fair, she whispered. Neither is pretending it doesn't mean anything. She turned away, arms crossing loosely. You're 23, maybe 24? 22. A soft exhale, part sigh, part laugh. Even worse. He smiled, small and unsure. You say that like it changes what's happening. She turned back to him then, and for the first time, there was no distance in her expression. Just fear, and something that looked too much like wanting. He stepped closer. Not enough to touch, but enough to feel the heat rising from the space between them. You should go, she said again, but it didn't sound like she meant it. He didn't move. His voice dropped lower. Do you want me to? Her silence was louder than any answer. Then, a sound from outside. The faint crunch of tires on gravel. Her eyes widened. He's home. They froze. She brushed past him quickly, reaching for the curtain, peering out. Their shoulders touched, a fleeting, electric contact that sent his heart racing. He wasn't supposed to be back yet, she whispered. He didn't answer, couldn't. Her perfume, that same faint floral note, brushed against him. The air between them thickened, sharp and sweet. When she turned, they were inches apart. Her breath touched his skin. His gaze fell to her mouth, just for a second, just long enough to forget the sound of the car door outside. And then, footsteps. A voice calling out, "Mom?" They jumped apart. She straightened her blouse, voice steadying with practiced calm. "In here." Noah's voice came closer. "Who were you talking to?" She glanced at him, just once, eyes steady but pleading. He found his voice. "Just me," he said. "Drop something off." "Cool." Noah's footsteps faded up the stairs again. Only when the silence returned did they breathe. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for the counter. "This has to stop," she said quietly. He nodded, though he didn't move toward the door. The rain began again, soft, persistent. He looked at her one last time. She looked back and didn't look away. It had been weeks since that night, since the near touch, the breath caught halfway to a confession. He told himself he wouldn't go back. But every time his phone lit up with a message, every time he passed that quiet house on the corner, something inside him pulled harder. Tonight, he didn't plan it. He dropped Noah off after a late movie. But when his friend ran inside for a jacket, she appeared at the door again. That same calm expression, that same dangerous quiet. "You can come in," she said. "He'll be there for a while." He hesitated in the doorway, rain still on his jacket. "I shouldn't." "I know." The way she said it, steady, almost gentle, undid him more than anything else. He stepped inside. The living room was dim, a single lamp painting gold across the floorboards. She'd been reading again, a glass of wine half finished beside her. "Rough night?" he asked, trying to be casual. She smiled faintly. "Long week." "Work's been." She stopped, shaking her head. "You don't want to hear about that." "I do," he said, softer than he meant to. Her gaze lifted, direct, unguarded this time. "Why do you keep coming back here?" He swallowed. "Maybe because I don't know how not to." Skin. His gaze fell to her mouth, just for a second, just long enough to forget the sound of the car door outside. And then, footsteps. A voice calling out, "Mom?" They jumped apart. She straightened her blouse, voice steadying with practiced calm. "In here." Noah's voice came closer. "Who were you talking to?" She glanced at him, just once, eyes steady but pleading. He found his voice. "Just me," he said. "Drop something off." "Cool." Noah's footsteps faded up the stairs again. Only when the silence returned did they breathe. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for the counter. "This has to stop," she said quietly. He nodded, though he didn't move toward the door. The rain began again, soft, persistent. He looked at her one last time. She looked back and didn't look away. It had been weeks since that night, since the near touch, the breath caught halfway to a confession. He told himself he wouldn't go back. But every time his phone lit up with a message, every time he passed that quiet house on the corner, something inside him pulled harder. Tonight, he didn't plan it. He dropped Noah off after a late movie. But when his friend ran inside for a jacket, she appeared at the door again. That same calm expression, that same dangerous quiet. "You can come in," she said. "He'll be there for a while." He hesitated in the doorway, rain still on his jacket. "I shouldn't." "I know." The way she said it, steady, almost gentle, undid him more than anything else. He stepped inside. The living room was dim, a single lamp painting gold across the floorboards. She'd been reading again, a glass of wine half finished beside her. "Rough night?" he asked, trying to be casual. She smiled faintly. "Long week." "Work's been." She stopped, shaking her head. "You don't want to hear about that." "I do," he said, softer than he meant to. Her gaze lifted, direct, unguarded this time. "Why do you keep coming back here?" He swallowed. "Maybe because I don't know how not to." She stood, crossing the small distance between them. The faint sound of the clock filled the pause. "You think this is harmless?" she asked, voice low. "That you can just keep looking at me like that and walk away?" He didn't answer. Couldn't. Her breath trembled when she exhaled. "You're my son's friend." "I know. I'm twice your age." He nodded. "Then why?" She stopped herself, shaking her head again, but the unfinished question hung between them. He took a slow step forward, the air tight enough to hear each breath. "Tell me to go, and I will." Her throat moved as she swallowed. "You think it's that simple?" "Nothing about this feels simple." A faint smile tugged at her lips. Not amusement, but surrender. "You don't understand what this could ruin." He met her eyes. Maybe it already has. The room seemed smaller suddenly, the space between them heavy with everything unsaid. She turned slightly, brushing past him to set down her glass. Her shoulder grazed his arm. Just fabric, just heat, but his pulse jumped anyway. When she turned back, her hair brushed against his hand. Neither moved. He caught the faint scent of her, that familiar floral note, and something shifted in her eyes, something fragile and unguarded. "This shouldn't happen," she whispered. "I know," he said again, but the words had lost their strength. Her fingers trembled as she reached to tuck her hair behind her ear. He didn't mean to, but his hand moved too, catching hers midway. Her breath caught. Outside, thunder rolled somewhere far away, too soft to break the silence. She looked down at their hands, not holding, not yet, and then up at him. "Don't," she said, but her voice barely carried the word. He leaned closer, just enough that his whisper brushed her cheek. "Then stop me." She didn't. Her eyes closed. 1 second, maybe 2, and in that suspended heartbeat, everything they'd been avoiding balanced on the edge. The sound of the front door opening shattered it. Noah's voice, carried from the hallway, light and easy. "Hey, Mom, you still up?" Her hand slipped from his like a secret release too late. She stepped back, too fast, too careful. "I should," she began, but her voice faltered. He nodded once, words gone. From the doorway, Noah's shadow appeared, unaware, smiling. "Oh, hey, man. You're still here." He forced a smile. "Yeah, just leaving." She turned away, but not before he saw it, the flash of regret, the breath she couldn't quite take. And when he stepped past her toward the door, their shoulders brushed again. Light, electric, unforgivable. Neither spoke, but both knew what almost happened would never fully disappear. He hadn't seen her in days. Not since that night. The almost, the silence, the door that broke everything they weren't brave enough to name. But tonight, her message was simple. "We need to talk." He stood on her porch again, the light flickering just as it had the first time. The door opened before he could knock. She looked different, not polished, not guarded. Just tired. Honest. "Come in," she said. He did, quietly. The house was dim, the kind of stillness that comes before something breaks. For a while, neither spoke. She poured 2 glasses of water, not wine this time, and set one in front of him. "Noah's out," she said. He nodded. "I figured." She sat across from him, fingers tracing the rim of her glass, a nervous gesture he hadn't seen before. "This can't go on," she said finally. He swallowed hard. "I know, but it doesn't change what's already happened," she added, softer. He met her eyes. Nothing happened. She looked at him, and he realized how wrong that sounded. Everything had. She rose, pacing slowly toward the window. "You're too young to carry someone else's loneliness." "Maybe I'm not trying to carry it," he said. "Maybe I just see you." That made her stop. Her hand rested against the frame, knuckles white. "Don't say things like that." "Why not?" "It's true. Because it makes it harder to forget." He stood then, the distance between them shrinking with every breath. "Do you really want to forget?" Her eyes lifted, catching the faint light. For a moment, he saw everything she'd been holding back. Fear, longing, guilt. And beneath it, something softer, something that hurt to recognize. She didn't answer. Not in words. The clock ticked once, twice. He took one step closer. Then another. "Don't," she whispered, but her voice trembled. He stopped an arm's length away, close enough to feel her warmth, to hear the uneven rhythm of her breathing. "I'm not here to ruin anything," he said quietly. "I just can't keep pretending you don't matter." She closed her eyes. "You shouldn't have said that." "Maybe not." Her hand lifted, slow, uncertain, as if to touch his face, then fell before it reached him. The gesture itself said everything. "You'll regret this someday," she murmured. "Maybe," he said, "but I'd regret walking away more." The silence that followed felt alive, like the air itself had turned fragile. Her lips parted as if to speak, but no words came. Instead, she exhaled, one quiet, trembling breath that said what neither dared admit. Then she stepped back. "You should go," she said again, almost breaking on the last word. He didn't move. Not yet. Their eyes held. Two people who finally understood what they'd never be able to say again. And then, with the smallest nod, she turned away. He left without a word, the sound of the door closing softer than his heartbeat. Outside, the night was still. Rain hung in the air, but didn't fall. He looked back once, the porch light steady this time. No flicker, no signal, just quiet certainty. What they'd shared couldn't be undone, and neither of them would ever pretend it hadn't happened. Weeks passed. The last time he saw her, she'd told him to go, and for once, he'd listened. He told himself distance would fade whatever they'd almost become. It didn't. He'd see her car sometimes on his way to campus, or hear Noah mention her offhand. Mom's been painting again. She's seeing friends more. Each time, something in him ached, not with regret, but with quiet understanding. Then one late afternoon, he found himself on that familiar street again, without planning to be. The sky was pale, gold spilling across the houses. He slowed the car, not to stop, just to look, and she was there, in the yard, pruning roses by the porch. Her hair was tied up, sunlight caught in the edges. She looked peaceful, not waiting, not hiding. He almost kept driving, but she glanced up, as if she'd felt him before seeing him. Their eyes met, brief, calm, certain. She smiled. A small, knowing smile. The kind that didn't ask questions, didn't promise anything, just saw. He parked across the street and stepped out. She didn't speak when he walked closer. Just wiped her hands on a cloth and leaned against the railing. "Hi," he said quietly. "Hi," she answered. The word carried no surprise. "I wasn't sure if I should come by." "You weren't supposed to," she said, then softened. "But I'm glad you did." He smiled a little, unsure where to look. "I didn't want it to end like that." "It didn't," she said. "It just paused." For a moment, they stood there. No tension this time, no line to cross. Just two people who had lived through the quiet storm of their own making. She looked toward the sky. "I've been thinking a lot. About choices. About what we mean to people and what we take from them." He nodded. "Me too. I was scared," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Not of you. Of what you made me remember. That I could still feel something real." He took a small step closer, enough to catch the warmth of her breath. "You didn't imagine it." "I know." He hesitated, then reached out, not to pull her closer, just to touch her hand. Their fingers met lightly, familiar now, steady. No rush, no guilt. Just connection, quiet, deliberate. She smiled again, softer this time. "You're still too young," she said. "Maybe," he said, "but I'll grow into it." She laughed, a sound lighter than any he'd heard from her before. Then she leaned in, resting her forehead against his for a brief moment. No words, no promises, just peace. When she pulled away, the air felt easier. The sun dipped low, painting the world in gold and shadow. "Take care of yourself," she said. "You too." He turned, walking back toward his car, but she called after him once more. "Hey," she said, smiling faintly. "Thank you." He didn't ask what for. He just nodded, the same quiet warmth spreading through him that had started it all, the night she first opened that door in silence. This time, though, it didn't feel forbidden. It felt complete. And as he drove away, he didn't look back. He didn't need to. Some moments don't fade. They just settle, in the quiet, in the heart, where words never quite reach. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next? Slow burn romances, emotional reunions, or something entirely new?